Jonisha Brown. She is the founder of Birthright here in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. And she four people told me to connect with her. Four from different components, different areas was like, you need to connect with her when I was telling people the work that I was doing. So she is well known here. She is a trendsetter. She is a leader here in Charlotte when it comes down to maternal health. So please, Dr. Brown, I know she always tells me to call her by her first name, but that's uncomfortable for me. Please, Dr. Brown, hop on and tell us your story. And we really, really want to hear about the work that you do at Birthright.
Well, thank you so much, Neshe. It's a blessing, but also so heavy, to sit in these spaces with other Black women as we're sharing our story is necessary, because in this community, I feel like we can understand each other like no one else can. Um, and then just giving space to the trauma and to the discussion is so necessary for healing. And I just really want to just give space to that because it's important for us to just sit in it and not have answers and not try to necessarily fix every problem, but just to give space for the story and for the experiences that we've gone through. So I am a family physician, and I feel like at this point I should probably apologize for all of medicine. That's honestly how I feel sometimes. And I always say to people, it's very difficult being in medicine as a Black woman. And I know Ashley spoke to this as well. You live in this dual positionality where the seat that you sit in, if you are trying to be a true Black woman, never really feels right. And most of us go into this space to help people who look like us and who look like our family. And the system is always trying to restrict us in the way that we try to partner with them in that space, sitting in that seat with that white coat on. And I'd say to people all the time, you have to make sure it's not about skin color. You have to make sure that the person that you're with can see you as a person. And that comes in many different shades, many different genders or gender identities. And it's less about having somebody who's Black or African American, and more about someone who can see someone as an individual and personalize that care, and be able to explain things to you, and sit there until you have an understanding of what's going on, the extra that they bring to the table of what's going on with your body. Because not being in medicine, we go to school for at least 7 years to learn all this about medicine. And so there is a bank of knowledge that the general population won't have that we can add to the table. And it's only effective if we can add that to who you are as an individual. And so, like many people have said on this call, it's important for somebody to see you and to listen to you, so that they can individualize that care. For me, with that dual positionality as a family physician, I have two boys. And I went into medicine for underserved care, trained in North Carolina, came here to Charlotte to do residency, trained at Biddle Point, and which is right across the street from Johnson C. Smith University. And, was really in medicine doing underserved care. And then I had my second son. My first son I had in medical school. My second son I had not too long after residency. And 10 days after I had him, I had a heart attack from a very rare condition called spontaneous coronary artery dissection. Was previously healthy, had no medical conditions, was an athlete all my life. No indication that anything would happen. And I thought that I was actually having a blood clot when I went to the hospital, and was completely thrown when I found out that it was a heart attack. And honestly, I went to the hospital that I was employed at the time, which shall remain nameless because we only have two major systems in Charlotte. And was sat in the waiting room for quite some time, even though I was physically going through all the experiences of having a heart attack. And I only went back when one of my colleagues, a white male who knew that I went to the hospital that night, he came to the emergency room because he heard my husband told him everything that had gone on, and he had seen us earlier that day. He took one look at me and was like, she's a physician. She needs to go back right now. And I was initially misdiagnosed. The emergency room provider told me that maybe I was having heartburn or a panic attack, before he repeated my blood work, which is what you have to do if someone comes in with the reported chest pain. And my heart labs were through the roof. And that's how I ended up getting diagnosed with a heart attack. So, I share that story often, like Nigel said, because people think that there's a specific type of Black woman that has issues that occur with her in pregnancy or after, and that is not the case. The research does not show that at all. It can happen to all of us, regardless of your educational background, your health, the amount of money that you have. And actually, as you get more education and more wealth, it actually is more likely to happen to you. That's what the evidence shows because of how people respond to that. And also the stress component that a lot of us have to go through to get in those spaces and the wear and tear from that weathering that happens to our body. So, I spend a lot of time, I still practice, but I do spend a lot of time with Birthright, honestly teaching and being in community with Black women to number one, make us aware of the stress that we have on our body, because I do think that was a huge component that if there was anything that I could have done, it was that I was not being the best keeper of my body when it came to stress. And actually, Naja said something in a yoga session that we had recently about not stealing from ourselves. Naja, that really stuck with me. And I was always stealing from myself wealth and health because I wasn't a good keeper of my mental health and my stress. But outside of that, the bigger component was the discrimination and bias. And it's always so easy to respond to racism when it's like right in your face. But most of the time in medicine, it happens very subtly, and you feel something's not right, but you can't put your finger on it until it gets a little bit worse, and then you might recognize it, but it's that quick moment like we've all talked about where it's life or death, and realizing what's happening earlier, and starting to counteract that, getting the help that you need in that space for people to advocate you is really important. So a lot of our work in Birthright too is understanding what it is to use direct responses to say, that's not going to work for me. Or you did not explain that to me. Why do you want to remove my ovary? Tell me what you saw that made you feel like I had an ovary that needed to be removed. Really that direct conversation to really, confront the racism, discrimination, bias that we often face in medicine that stands in the way of us getting the care that we need. So for, just being mindful of time, I think this is really impactful for us to be in space together. And like we've talked about, to share these stories because you don't know what you don't know. And there's so many Black women who have not birthed yet or have birthed and they didn't recognize it. I mean, like my first child, I didn't even see a lot of the things that were going on. But when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, that was definitely discrimination. You don't see it. But if we can be in community with each other and talk about these things freely, then we can educate each other and educate women who have not birthed or still are not coming to that realization of really what's occurring to us in the healthcare system.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Listen, I love that statement. We don't know what we don't know. And just to be able to have you on here with your expertise and also from professionally and personally being able to have your truth in your story really, really impacts for everyone who spoke today. Just we we have to tell our stories, y'all. We have to. And this is something that, yes, is a mission, but it's a purpose that we have to continue to have these meetings, these come-togethers, and the next time we have one, bring two more people, even if they're not birthing people or mothers, bring them if they're interested in starting a family, so we can educate and talk. That's how we really learn, word of mouth. Hey, this is what I had. They didn't see this, but I wound up getting, delayed preeclampsia. Hey, she had, the results of her heart um results was high. So she wanted to find out she had a heart attack. The things that we don't think about. They wasn't communicating with me. And then they just told me at the end what happened a whole year later. It's things that we don't think to ask or talk about or address. Again, like Dr. Brown said, until it's too late. We don't know what we don't know.